Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Mess. So today we're going to continue the series, the Unported Playlist Hall of Fame, where I look at some of my favorite arcade games of all time that I've never seen home ports, reaching into the backlog of my videos to talk about games to a new audience. And if you can't tell already, today we're playing the Maze of the Kings. This was released by Sega on the Sega Naomi, never got ported to the Dreamcast because that console just did not live a very long life. If you love the House of the Dead, if you love Virtual Cop, you're going to absolutely love this game because it's basically the House of the Dead in an Egyptian setting versus a haunted mansion with a bunch of zombies. And if there's one genre outside of arcade racing that Sega does better than anyone else in my opinion, it is a light gun game. The Maze of the Kings is just a straight up 10 out of 10 experience from start to finish. It has all the light gun action you know and love from Sega with an Egyptian setting. It's basically the House of the Dead meets Indiana Jones in the best way possible. And like I said, sadly, this never got ported home, and these arcade cabinets are exceedingly rare, down to the fact that the light gun was actually a large plastic Egyptian staff, and that thing breaks basically all the time because nobody treats it well whatsoever. You'll see here that we roll some dice virtually, of course, and we go to the next area number. This game has multiple branching pathways, and it makes it seem like there's 999 different variations. That is not true whatsoever. There's only a few different branching paths, but some of them are exceedingly rare, and in this gameplay session, I got an area of the game that I'd literally never seen before, and I probably played this thing 7 or 8 times from start to finish. If you are wondering, I'm playing this with my gun for IR, absolutely spectacular way to play. And I got to area 169, but we all know it takes 2 to do that correctly. All jokes aside, this is just Sega doing what Sega does best. A high-intensity, action-packed arcade light gun game on the Sega Naomi. The only thing about this game that I wish it did differently, and it is a very minor gripe, is that compared to something like the House of the Dead 2, this does not have any gore effects. Basically, you shoot the enemies, no limbs pop off, they just kind of fade away into the distance. I do wish that you could do some dismemberment and disemboweling here with all of your shots. But this is just one of those games, if you've never played it before and you like the light gun genre, you absolutely have to check this out. It's unfortunate that this didn't kind of catch the public's imagination the same way as something like Virtual Cop or House of the Dead did, and honestly it's probably up there with Confidential Mission of Sega arcade games that were really good that no one seems to talk about anymore. Maybe it was just a saturation of these type of games back in the day, people had seen one too many of them. But if you've never checked this out, definitely do it. And as we come to the first boss here, this large Egyptian funerary head, I just love the overall art style in this game. It looks so good on Naomi. And I know I've said this before, but if 3D graphics never got any better than this, and we've been playing this level of fidelity for the last 20 some odd years, I would be perfectly happy. This game has just enough story to get you involved, but it's an arcade game, so not so much that it bogs you down. All of the boss encounters, all of the enemies are just 10 out of 10s. This is the type of game you play it for 25 to 30 minutes, you have an absolute blast, it's action-packed, and then you just move on with your day and do something different. But tell me down below, have you ever played the Maze of the Kings before, and do you know where there's an arcade cabinet somewhere in the US? I probably haven't seen this game for about 10 years or so, but I'm always looking for one. And honestly, I can play this on my real Naomi hardware with IR sensors, but it is a gigantic pain to set up, so gun for IR and emulation is the way to go. Now, after every boss battle, you're going to get the opportunity to get a bonus item. They start easy and then become exceedingly hard and sometimes frustrating. All you need to do is shoot that Anubis through the lasers and you can collect it. There's a couple though that basically come up to just luck and chance, and I'll show you those in just a bit. But as we get outside here and have a camel race against enemies, shooting them the entire way, this game just has so much personality and charm. That's what Sega always put into their games. They felt so familiar, yet unique at the same time, and the Maze of the Kings is no different. This kind of reminds me a little bit of Jambo Safari, also on Naomi, except it's a light gun game and not an animal capture game. But if you've never played Jambo Safari, another big recommendation from me for sure. And of course it's Sega, you know it's going to have an awesome soundtrack, so go ahead and listen for 45 seconds. I'll come back and tell you more about the history of the game.
Let's go.
It's an awesome soundtrack that totally fits the Egyptian horror theming going on here, and I can't really think of a single Sega arcade game that I wouldn't say at least has a good soundtrack. If you can think of a bad Sega arcade soundtrack, tell me down below because I can't think of anything right now. But something like The Maze of the Kings, I am just destined to love this game. I still remember the first time I played the original House of the Dead at the Great Escape in New York in their arcade, and I fell in love with it, and since then I've absolutely loved the light gun genre. Now this area right here, 328, this is the one in all of my playthroughs I have never encountered. When this opened up, I was super excited because it's just something that the game had never shown me before. And that's always exciting when a game you played a ton still has something to reveal to you. And if you've never played The Maze of the Kings, you could play this thing 3, 4, 5, 6 times in a row and see a completely different route through the game. Although I'm not aware of any sort of route map that exists, so if you know of one, leave me a comment down below and tell me where to find it, because I've never seen anyone actually break down how many levels this game actually has and how many different variables you can articulate. I'm not even sure, honestly, if the route map is a complete RNG roll of the dice, or if something about your performance to a particular level or your score affects that. And I kind of actually like that about the game. I'm sure I could look that information up, but I like the sense of wonder of what's going to happen next, so I can't actually try to play the game in a certain way to get a certain path, because this doesn't feel like I did anything special on that area before I got to this fog level in this swamp than I've done before. And that is just another reason why this game shines. There's always something to show you that's new, always something unique, and it really does keep you on its toes. The only thing that's going to be 100% consistent is the level in which you start an area and the boss in which you end it. Everything in between is totally up to chance, it seems. And I do love the boss battles in this game as well. This gigantic, what looks like a rattlesnake mixed with the body of a woman with the wings of some sort of serpent, it just works in the context of the game. And of course it's a Sega arcade light gun game, so just like the House of the Dead, you have to have one boss by law that flies around. Sega definitely sticks to what works for them, and this boss battle is no different. Now here's though is where I say trying to get the best score and collecting all of the different idols can be a random crapshoot. You're going to see that these move around and you can kind of track them, but towards the very end it's very easy to lose them. I just wish that this was a situation where your accuracy was what matters. Something like Point Blank, you had to make a very skilled shot, and if you missed it, it was your fault. Losing the bonus item in a game of what seems to be like 3-card Monty isn't the most exciting thing, but honestly, that is the tiniest complaint about a game, that every single time I play it, I absolutely love it. And it is just interesting that this didn't seem to hit the same way that the House of the Dead or Virtual Cop did. Sega made a lot of arcade light gun games. This one is just one that I never hear people talk about, and that's why it is on Unported Hall of Fame, because this is the type of title that I think everyone should play at least once. Whether you emulate it, whether you find an arcade cabinet, or whether you have a real Naomi and you want to set up those IR sensors and the actual light gun, you need to check this out. But I'm sure if you own a Naomi and all that, you've already played it. And again, if you have the gun for IR, it's a spectacular experience and maybe even more accurate than real arcade hardware. This is a game in which emulation probably is the best way to enjoy it. But as we go further down into the pyramid here, I do love the art style. It's not so much a capital H horror game. Of course there's monsters, of course there's different beasts to fight, but compared to something like the House of the Dead, this is lighter horror, and it kind of works in this enchanted Egyptian pyramid way. And when you go through some of the last areas of the game, you get so many fun graphical effects that just look like classic Dreamcast and Naomi. This to me was a special generation as far as 3D was concerned. It just had the look and feel of something I've loved, and I still think that art style holds up so well today. Even when we come in here with this waterfall, clearly not actually water, just the texture, it has such a charm to it. And because every area is different, every area has new music as well. So one more sound sample, 30 seconds this time, and I'll come back and show you the rest of the game and tell you why I love it so much. Not only is the music awesome, but again, it's perfectly married to the thematic content you see in front of you. That Egyptian sound with the strings just works. And now we have what looks like a green goblin riding a Harry Potter broom and an electric guitar at the same time. Not exactly sure what he's supposed to be, but it does work in the context of the game. And he calls for 3 mini stone golems, which when you defeat them, are going to rebuild themselves into one gigantic stone golem. And that is just fun and definitely tied to Egyptian theming back in the day. And this game definitely takes a lot of inspiration from history, but of course pivots it, because while I was not part of ancient Egypt, I'm pretty sure this is not what it looked like back then, or maybe it did and we just don't realize that. But all jokes aside here, again, I just love this game. It's so unique, it's so dynamic, it's so different than basically everything else. The closest thing I can think of would be Crypt Killer by Konami, but I would say the Maze of the Kings is definitely the better of the two games, even if I do own a Crypt Killer PCB and absolutely love that one as well. I just love the Dreamcast and Naomi era, the look, the feel, the sound. This is just perfect hardware in my opinion, and the Maze of the Kings is the perfect utilization of that Naomi hardware. I just wish this game had been more popular and more people had played it and more arcade cabinets continued to exist, because again, I have not seen this in a long time. And what other game is going to let you fight a gigantic mech beetle with a green goblin inside rolling a dung ball towards you? This is just funny at times, but it always works. You're always having fun playing it, and it's always an incredible experience. But again, have you ever played this game before? I would be curious. I feel like this one's a deeper cut. Of all the Naomi games I hear people talk about, I never hear anyone mention the Maze of the Kings, and that bums me out because it is just a great game. And if you like the House of the Dead, you're going to love this one as well, because the gameplay style is very familiar while at the same time having a completely different theme behind it. So definitely play the Maze of the Kings. It's a 10 out of 10 in my experience, and I'll be back next week with some more Hall of Fame. Short of that, he is dead, we are done, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.